everyone, welcome back to Unique Vessel, and this is Soraya the Vessel here. And today, we're going to be talking about how we're different and how that's okay. And I wanted to talk about this for a while, for like the past few days it's been in my head, because in this day and age, in this society, we have been taught, and it's been somewhat forced down our throats and been tried being embedded in our heads that we need to act a certain way, we need to talk a certain way, we need to think a certain way, we need to do things in a certain way that is made to look normal. But in reality, normal doesn't really exist, especially when it comes to God. Because if you look up any story in the Bible, God is not the God of normal. He is the God of abnormal, of the supernatural, of just everything just big and grand and extravagant. And I wanted to give you guys some examples of people who were different and they embodied those differences to make a difference. So let's get started. The first person we're going to talk about is David. Now, I'm going to start off with David, how different he is, in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7. And I'm looking down because my Bible is right here. But the verse reads, "But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." And I like this verse because one, it was like in my head, God telling the prophet Samuel that is this one is different. He's telling off the bat, look, the person that I chose to be king, he's gonna be different, but he's a good type of different. So don't be looking at how fine he looks on the outside. If he got big muscles, nice long curly hair, whatever. No, don't look for that, because man looks at that, and I'm not man, I'm God. I look at the heart. So that's one thing I love about that scripture. And then to go on, we're gonna jump to 1 Samuel chapter 17 and verses 26 through 47, which is where he goes to fight Goliath in the field. And it starts off with his father Jesse sending him out to bring little snacks and stuff to his older brothers who were soldiers in Saul's army. And so he goes out, and then he sees all the people are terrified of this big old 7-foot giant named Goliath in the field, taunting them, saying how he could easily break their bones apart like twigs and everything. And then in chapter 17, verse 26, David says, "What shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" Now let's pause right there. He has the courage to say that out loud. That is who is this uncircumcised Philistine, this 7-foot big old fool trying to come against the armies of the living God that I serve, that who I know is great and mighty? That shows you the amount of boldness he has in that alone. And I bet you all the other people around him is who's this young little boy talking all crazy? And so the word gets around and it gets to Saul's ear, and so Saul calls him. And then David says that, "Oh, I'll go fight him." And then King Saul is like, "Little boy, you're too young." And then in verses 32 through 37, he is saying how he would look after his father's sheep. He had to fight lions, he had to fight bears, he had to fight coyotes, wolves, all of the types of animals that would try to get his sheep. And he would fight them hand-to-hand combat. I think the only weapon he probably had was his shepherd's rod and his rock and slingshot. And he would kill them, and he would defend his father's sheep. And he's basically telling Saul, like, look, if I was able to kill all these wild animals, I could definitely kill this wild-looking 7-foot tall giant. Like, and I got God on my side, so I know I'm good. And so he's getting ready to go up, and then Saul wants to give him this armor. And David wasn't comfortable in it. There's like, I haven't been like trained for this. It doesn't fit me. It doesn't feel comfortable. I'm gonna just go out with my rock and slingshot. And so he goes out. And then Goliath, he sees David. And then Goliath is like, boy, if you don't get up out of here with your little rock and slingshot coming at me with rocks and sticks. And quick fact, Psalm 23, David wrote based off his experience with fighting Goliath in the field of battle. In case y'all didn't know that. If y'all don't know what Psalm 23 is, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He restoreth my soul. You want to know the rest of it? Read the Bible. Anyway, so long story short, he's able to defeat Goliath. He knocks him down unconscious, throws him to the ground, runs up to him, takes his sword out his sheath, and cuts off his head. And it goes to show you that he, one, had the courage, the bravery, the boldness, and the faith in God and through God to be able to go defeat Goliath. And if he hadn't had any of those things, he would have probably just been standing on the sidelines with the other soldiers, and Israel's army would have got whooped, and they probably would have been in exile or in slavery. Also, to show he had so much dignity within himself and in God, in 1 Samuel 24 and in 1 Samuel chapter 26, he spared Saul's life when Saul was chasing to kill him. Not once, but twice. Twice. The first time in chapter 24 was when David was hiding in a cave, and King Saul just so happened to relieve himself. Some like scholars who like interpret the language say it meant peeing, and then others say it meant pooing. So he's basically going to the bathroom, relieving himself, and in the cave where David was hiding. And David so happened to see him, and the men that were with David in the cave were saying, oh, this is your chance, because you already know you're going to be the king on the throne. This is your chance to kill him so you can take your rightful place. And then David's like, no, like, I'm not going to kill the Lord's anointed. So all he did was cut off a corner of his robe. And then he yells out to Saul, Dad's like, oh, King David, like, Dad's like, I don't know why you're chasing me. I don't know why you're trying to kill me. I've done nothing to you. I've been nothing but good to you. And to show you how much respect I have for you, I just cut off a corner of your robe. Like, I don't want to kill you. Like, I don't want to fight you. And then he did it a second time in chapter 26, where they were close to where Saul's army was like camped out in the middle of the night. And they went to King Saul's tent, him and one of his like servants, one of the people who was like with him, and they go to him. He had a spear. King Saul had like a spear like stabbed in the ground by his head, and he had a water jar next to him. And again, the dude that was with David is like, oh, like, please, like, let me kill him this time, like, please let me kill him. Then David's like, no, we're not killing him. So what he does, he takes his jar of water, and he takes his spear, and there he goes. And then he does the same thing again. That's like, I spared your life once again, like, because I refused to kill the Lord's anointed and this, that, and the other. Shows how much different of a person he was. He had that much respect, not even for Saul, but for God, to know there's like one, like, God didn't really give him the authority to like kill Saul whenever he saw him, but he just had respect to know that he was God's anointed, that God had chosen him at one point in time, like God's hand was upon him. So he had so much respect for that he didn't try to kill him. Now, the second person I'm going to talk about is someone that's not really talked about that much, but from what I've heard and noticed, he's usually talked about around Easter and any time any church does a communion service. And this is the thief on the cross. Now this story takes place in Luke chapter 23 verses 32 and 43. So the scene is that Jesus is on the cross. He is in the process of crucifixion, and he has two thieves on either side of him, and one of the thieves is mocking him along with the rest of the soldiers down below, saying like, are you not the Christ? Like, you should be able to save yourself and save us. Like, we don't want to be up here either. And then the other robber, he rebukes him, saying like, do you not like have respect and believe in God? Like, you are like, me and you, we deserve to be up here, but this man has done nothing wrong. Like, he took up for Jesus. Like, he knew he did nothing wrong. He knew just from how he was, like what he was giving off, that he was innocent. He knew he was innocent, and he knew Jesus didn't deserve to be up there. And so he looked to Jesus and said, like, please remember me when you go to be with God in heaven. And then Jesus told him that, surely I say unto you, you shall be with me in paradise. Because of the thief of the cross, the fact that he was able to see Jesus as one, being the Son of God, and that was probably his first face-to-face meeting with him, realizing that he was the Son of God. And in that moment, I believe he realized he was there for a greater purpose, and not just being with the other people saying, oh, but you're the Son of God, you should have power to take yourself off the cross. Like, no, I feel that he realized he had a greater purpose, a greater plan in that situation, and then was like taking up for him that it's like he did nothing wrong. Like, he's obviously doing this for something else that's greater than what's going on at the moment. Now the third person we're going to be talking about is Barnabas. And Barnabas, I rarely hear people talk about him. I believe he deserves more recognition, so that's what we're going to do today. Now Barnabas, he shows up sometimes, not that much in the New Testament, mainly in the book of Acts, but we're going to talk about him where he comes in Acts chapter 9 verses 26 and 28, where he steps in as an advocate for Paul. Now, to give a little backstory, and I'm going to try to do it as quick and brief as I can, because I believe everyone should know about the story of Paul. But Paul basically started out as a martyr of anyone who was a believer of Jesus Christ. Like, he just was on a rampage of just killing them all. He was basically the biblical version of Hitler at that time. Basically just killing off all the Jews, anyone who believed in Jesus Christ at that time. Like, he was just so against them. And then one day he was in the desert and he encountered Jesus riding his camel. He fell off the camel and he got blinded by the sight of Jesus and all his glory and majesty. He ended up being blind, and then God sent Ananias to go to him and to deliver him of his blindness. And after that had happened, he went on to preaching the gospel, saying that Jesus Christ was the Son of God and that he is real, and that only through him that you can be saved, and this, that, and the other. And so, of course, the people he was preaching this to was the same people who he was persecuting. And so they're looking at him like, weren't you just like at my mama's house killing all my relatives? Like, how you gonna just switch your story around like that? Like, nah, I'm not gonna listen to you. And so then comes Barnabas. Barnabas was part of the discipleship, like with Peter and John and all of them. But I don't think John was there at the time. I'm not sure. Sorry for that. And so Barnabas, he's seeing Paul like sharing this gospel, and he's seeing how he went from being this martyr of Christians to this preacher of the gospel. And so he brings him to the disciples, and he's saying that I've seen like the change that God has put in him in this young man, and I believe he can do great things with us in this growing of the church that we're trying to accomplish. And so if it wasn't for Barnabas being trusting like he was, and him being loyal, like I think he was probably the only one of the disciples who was like kind of rooting for Barnabas. And I believe we need more people like Barnabas in this day and age, especially when it comes to youth, that the older generation will look down upon me like, oh, they're no good, like they just loud and rowdy and they like to get wild and crazy and everything. But it takes people like Barnabas to put themselves aside and actually get to know the person, actually see that God put something in them, and like actually take the time to see it instead of just judging them for their outward appearance. And yeah, just to give them a chance, because God gives us a chance every day, another chance added to our life every day, every time we wake up in the morning. So why not be like Barnabas and give people a chance, especially when it comes to the work of God. Now this is the last person I'm going to use as an example, and this person is probably one of my favorite people from the Bible, and this person has probably one of my favorite stories throughout the Bible, and I read it over and over again, and I just keep getting just new revelation after another every time I read this story. And it's about Esther. Now, give you a little bit of a backstory. Again, try to do it as quick as I can. Esther, she was an orphan. Her parents were killed, and she was adopted by her uncle Mordecai. And in that time, the king had made a declaration, wanted to try to find a new wife, so he rounded up all the women in the area, one of them being Esther. But Mordecai had made Esther change her name to Hadassah, because he had like made her promise to like keep her like true identity like under wraps, so like her being a Jew. And so she's in the castle and she's like doing all these things to try to like become the next queen and everything. So the one thing that helped her is, one, I consider her that she was very wise, because in chapter 2 verse 15 of Esther, she sought her advice from the king's eunuch of oh, like what do you think I should do like for the king, like what do you think I should do for the king to like do this and that, whatever. And that won her favor in the eunuch and in the sight of all the other people there. And long story short, she ended up becoming king. But then later on in the story, this man named Haman decided that he wanted to annihilate all the Jews. And Mordecai, he had discovered, like found out the plot that he was going to try to kill off all the Jews. And he had sent messengers to his daughter, Esther, in the castle, that is like, you need to do something about it. You need to tell the king. And the regulation at that time was that if you came into the presence of the king unannounced, like in his courtroom, and if he didn't have favor over you by holding out his gold scepter to you, then you would have had your head cut off right then and there. And Esther had told him that is like, I haven't been called to the king in like 30 days. Like, if I show up in there just unannounced, he's gonna kill me. And then Mordecai just gave her just kind of like this reminder. It kind of just like, I think of it as like a wake-up call, that is like, you are here for a reason. That is like, what like makes you think that there could hopefully be some other savior outside of the castle walls to help the people? Like, what if it is you for such a time as this to save your people? And so Esther in chapter 4 verse 16 is like, you know what? Like you, like too, she said to Mordecai, like you gather the people in the city and tell them to pray and fast for 3 days. I'm gonna do the same with me and my maid servants, my ladies in the castle. We're gonna pray and fast for 3 days. And at the end of the 3 days, I will go to the king. And if I perish, I perish. So she went up to the king, and the king held out the gold scepter to her because she had favor in him and she had favor with God, which is why she was able to not get killed. And long story short, that she was able to confront Haman in front of the king about his plot trying to kill the people, her people, the Jewish people. And if it hadn't been for her bravery and her understanding, knowing that her people needed help, and she was basically the only one that could really do anything about it, and of her being selfless, not thinking of herself in that moment, that those different things about her, that if there was any other queen in her place, they probably would have never have done that. But Esther, she did, and she was able to free her people and make a difference. Now I want to end off the video by saying this from Ephesians chapter 2 verse 10, which says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." Now, in another version, it says masterpiece. And when you think of a masterpiece, it's a creation that an artist makes that is like, it is totally complex, it is unique, it is different than anything like anyone else has ever seen in any other art gallery or anything. And what makes you a masterpiece is that you were called out, that God put breath in your lungs for a reason. Like he created you, formed you in your mother's womb before you were even thought of by your parents, whether they wanted you or not. God wanted you, and God wanted you to be in this world for a reason. And it is up to us to know that we were created to be different, to make a difference in this world. And we have to also rely on the fact that God put these special gifts and talents and these different personality traits within us, that they're not all bad, that in God, if we actually put them in God's hands, he could transform it and make it into something for his good, that is good for the people around us to see. So that's all I wanted to share with you guys today, and I hope you guys received from what I shared with you guys today. If you have any comments and what you liked about the video or any other topics you would want to talk about, leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like, don't forget to share with your fellow friends. If you have like a friend that you know is kind of struggling with like finding out who they are, show them this video. If you know anyone that could use a message like this, show them this, share this. And also subscribe. There's a little bell next to the subscribe button that gives you notifications every time I upload a video, so make sure you do that. Follow my social media pages on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And yes, that's it. This is Soraya the Vessel, and I will see you next time. Bye.